But if you close your eyes,
Alright, DMA9. Now we're going to talk about the selection tools in Photoshop CS6. There are several of them, and you will find them here on our toolbar. Now the first one is the Marquee Tool, right here. And you will see have the rectangular marquee. If you simply right-click on any of the tools, you should be able to open up any of their options. So we have the rectangular marquee tool, the elliptical, single row, and single column. For now, we're going to focus on the rectangular and elliptical. Rectangular marquee tool is just exactly that. It lets you draw a rectangle around inside which is your selection. So if I wanted to copy this sky and not really get into the water, I just want the very bottom of the horizon, I now have a perfect rectangular marquee. I can hit Control C to copy, and perhaps I come over here, Control V to paste. Fantastic, I now have this very foreboding looking sky waiting for me. Awesome. Now let's say I really like this area here. I really like the clouds here. One thing I could do is I could click and drag this elliptical marquee tool, and it will create a circular shape. If I hold Shift, it will maintain its aspect ratio, just like with the transform tool. If you hold Shift, it keeps its proportion. That's good. So Control C, Control V. A little strange, I know, but perhaps I can make it work. So that is, again, the marquee tool. We've got our rectangular and elliptical. Now let's move on to something a little more, a little different. Let's move on to the Lasso tool. Our keyboard shortcut for that is L. And if you hold Shift and press any of these shortcuts, so M for marquee, L for lasso, you can shift through the options. Now, it starts off with our regular lasso tool, and this is simply, I click and I drag. Wherever I drag the mouse, the lasso tool selects. And that's what I get. If I want to add something to a selection, I can hold Shift, and you'll notice a little plus sign appears next to the lasso. So perhaps I really want to get Homer's shadow here. I'm being a bit sloppy, but that's okay. And then looking at that, you know what? I've still got a lot of green around him that I don't really need. If I hold Alt, I can subtract selection. So everything I am selecting will be removed or subtracted from my selection. There we go. Enables me to get pretty darn close to him. Make sure that you're doing the right, that you're finishing the loop, because if I simply go down here, if I just let go, Photoshop tries to figure out where you want that selection, and that's really not what I want. So Control Z steps me back, fortunately. So that is the lasso tool. Pretty standard, pretty easy. If we move along, we find the polygonal lasso tool. This is a little bit different. What we can do here is we click and make points, and between each point, the polygonal lasso tool creates straight lines. Now, for an image like this, where Homer here is made up completely of round lines, this is a pretty poor choice of tool. I would have a lot of difficulty, even if I zoomed right in, to try and capture every little bit of his curves. It would just be a pain. It might be better served, though, in something, say, like this, if I wanted to select our hero Steve here, because he's made up a bunch of polygon shapes. So it's very simple for me to select what I want from this picture. And if I'm being really quick and lazy, which you are not going to do obviously in all of your Photoshop work, I think you can get the idea how this would be very easy to get done. If you don't know where your start point is, because if you see, if I hover over the start point, a little circle shows up and that signifies I've created a loop. If you don't see that, you can simply double click and that will close your loop. All right. Now let's take a look at our next selection tool, which is the quick selection tool and the magic wand. Oh, actually, never mind. Let's do the magnetic lasso tool. What the magnetic lasso tool does is it is a bit smarter than the lasso tool, and it will, you'll see I'm lifting my mouse away from Homer, but my selection line keeps coming back. It's sort of like a magnet is drawn to metal. It is drawn to the different lines of my image. So I could just come over really fast, and I'm not having to click anything. I'm simply having to carefully drag over my image. Yeah, it did a pretty good job. One thing you will find when you're working with the magnetic lasso tool is it isn't perfect. You'll see here it thinks that I want to select the yellow in Homer's head, and if I wanted to simply cut out part of this image, it doesn't do a great job of creating a straight line, and every now and then I have students who forget to double click or hit escape to turn off their selection, and they end up with an image that looks kind of like this, which is a bit ridiculous. And they say, Mr. Bristol, what's going on? Simply hit escape a couple times, clear the selection, and that will see you through. Now let's take a look at this image. We've got two stormtroopers hanging off a line, and you'll notice that there are very definite contrasts between the background color of blue and the white and black of our stormtroopers. And when we have images with really good contrast like that, different colors, we can use our quick selection tool or the magic wand. Now the quick selection tool is, it's such a helpful one. And what you're saying with this selection tool here is you're telling Photoshop, all right, Photoshop, listen up, everything you see underneath my selection tool here, I want you to select. So first thing, I click down and I'm holding, and it selects what's blue. And I can keep selecting, and look at that, within 3 clicks, Photoshop figured out, okay, he's trying to select what is blue. Now, you don't have to click individually. You can click and drag. So I'm going to click and drag everything that is blue in this picture. And you know, I'm going to get rid of the cloud as well. I'm going to get rid of the butterfly and the clothesline, the clothespin, this clothespin. So you'll notice, however, that it wasn't the greatest at not selecting the stormtrooper. So what I can do, holding Alt, you see it changes from a plus to a minus. Holding Alt, I can say, hey, don't select this. It takes a while to learn what you want or don't want, but it picks it up rather quickly. So I'm just going to drag this over. I'm not being very precise. I'm just sort of telling it, hey, what's under this general area I don't want. And very quickly it picks it up. I'm using the bracket shortcut to change my brush size, and I'm telling it to select what's the sky that's in between their legs, and you'll notice it thinks I want to select everything there. But no, holding Alt, I simply tell it again what I don't want it to select. And there we go, with a very, very small amount of selection work, I could have, what I did there was I went to select and I hit inverse. I now have an excellent copied selection of the stormtroopers that I can use. So that, again, that's the quick selection tool The Magic Wand tool is very similar, except rather than clicking and dragging what you want to select, it tries to do it all in one step. So by clicking here, it simply viewed what part of the image was directly underneath the wand, and it saw, oh, it's the blue part of the image, so I'm going to select everything that's that exact shade of blue around. And by holding Shift, I can add more. If I'm not holding Shift, it will just start a brand new selection. If I keep holding Shift, I can add more. Now, it can be a bit of a pain because you can see that the tolerance is so fine here that it can see that there's a difference between this shade of the cloud and this shade of the cloud. So I can try selecting bit by bit there, which works. And for some things it's very helpful, but for the most part, let's use the quick selection tool because it's a bit smarter. The Magic Wand tool is a very old bit of the program. Quick selection is a little bit newer, a little more polished. So those are our selection tools, and you can use them to copy and paste, or if you'd like, you could limit where you are going to be drawing. Perhaps you want to give them let's give them, say a red helmet. So let's make a new layer, and inside that selection you'll see that I'm not able to paint anything except what's inside that layer. Then I can change my opacity down, and I've now given them a nice tinted helmet. And it works. You can mess around some of the blending. Yeah, that kind of works. So those are our selection tools. Feel free to use them and experiment.